let's talk a little bit about yesterday's games. We have to get into the Kentucky conversation. We have to touch on Keon Brooks. We definitely need to talk about Auburn and Alabama and Sharif Cooper and that completely drunk basketball game that we just watched. But first and foremost, man, we got to give a shout out to Andrew Jones.
Yeah.
I mean, he
makes me smile, man. It makes me smile. Almost 3 years to the day. You know, we talked to him, Robbie Hummel and I, earlier this week on our pod, and he said almost 3 weeks to the 3 years to the day he found out he had leukemia. And he was also, you know, there were so many interesting things. If you haven't watched it, you really need to. The Goodman and Hummel podcast, check it out. He was very introspective about everything. And, you know,
well, just real quick before you say that, for the people that didn't see it yesterday, Andrew hit a game-winning three with 1.1 seconds left at West Virginia to give Texas a win. They stay in first place in the Big 12 standings. So go ahead. I'm sorry.
Well, he had hip surgery this past offseason, and it went back to when he went through the NBA Combine, and the NBA people after his freshman year, before he was diagnosed with leukemia, said, hey, you're really, really tight. At some point, you should have hip surgery. He had it this past offseason and said, like, he's still getting used to his body and kind of his mechanics, and he's not shooting the ball well. And he was frustrated with that. But the thing with Andrew Jones is he's really grown up, because he admitted, like, freshman year, it was all about him. He thought he was one and done. It was all about his numbers. And everything that's happened with him, it's now all about team. And he said even though he's struggling from shooting the ball, he's okay with it because he's rebounding better. He's defending better. And most importantly, they're winning. And the shots will fall eventually. Those were kind of his words the other day. And the biggest shot probably of his career fell. And you could just see it on his face, Rob. Like, the emotion on his face after he hit that shot, and then the emotion with his teammates after he made that shot, was the coolest thing ever.
That's what got me, is that you could just see how happy everybody in that program was for him. And so here's my thing on it, right? Like, the fact that it was basically 3 years to the day, it was actually 3 years to the day that he publicly announced and publicly let people know that he had been diagnosed with leukemia. And I think the last game that they played was actually 3 years to the day of the diagnosis itself. But like, either way, like, that's just kind of like a clean and tidy narrative for people like us to kind of jump on. I think the real story, the thing that is so powerful and so impressive, is what happened between the day of the diagnosis and yesterday. I mean, this kid had 2 rounds of chemotherapy, right? I don't know if you guys have seen the videos of him in the hospital, like while he was going through it, when he was trying to like shoot baskets on like a little basket in the doorway. And it was just like, he was a completely different person. Like, I've known people that have gone through chemotherapy. I'm sure you have. I'm sure everybody listening to this has. And what it does to a person's body, it completely ravages it. And like, you have to, because that's the way that you kill cancerous cells, is to by like loading your body up with these like chemicals that are just not good for you. But it's the only way to battle it. And the fact that he's been able to get back to this level is just such an unbelievable feat. Like, I don't think it should ever be overlooked that, Shaka said it after the game yesterday. He was like, Andrew was always like, I'm coming back to play. I'm coming back to play. And Shaka's like, well, how about you just come back and be alive, basically, is what he was saying. And like, I'm not trying to be flippant. Like, that is, when you're dealing with leukemia and cancer, like, that is the goal. It's to live. And not only has he done that, like, he's thriving, man. And if you guys haven't heard his interview on Goodman's podcast, like, you have to go back and listen to it, because like, the kid's perspective on life, on improving, on bettering his community now, like, the kid is so inspiring, and just I couldn't be more happy for him.
Really grown up. He's really grown up since the last time, I think I said on the pod, the last time I talked to him in person was at the Combine. And back then, he was entitled. He was a top kid coming out of high school. He chose Texas over Arizona. Everybody wanted him. And he was kind of entitled, like, why aren't you guys saying I'm a first-round pick? I'm thinking of leaving. And he had no right being entitled at that point. He hadn't done enough his freshman year at Texas. But, man, his whole approach has changed, obviously, as it would with just about anybody who was diagnosed and had to deal with what he had to deal with.
You mentioned the shooting real quick.
Yeah.
Over his last 4 games, he is now averaging. Let me do the math real quick. He is now averaging 18 points, and he is shooting 12 for 28 from three,
Good.
which is, I hope I get this right, 42% roughly.
Yeah,
yeah, 42 about there. 40. I don't know if it's right.
Yeah.
If it's wrong, someone's gonna let me know. But like he's figured it out, man. He's coming good.
It segues into it's why Texas right now is kind of for real, right? Like Andrew Jones is back to kind of. He might even be better than the Andrew. He is. He's better than the Andrew Jones as a freshman because he's far more mature and he does everything. He doesn't just. It's not just about scoring. So you add him with Courtney Ramey, with Matt Coleman, a senior, with their front line, which is, man, it is their front line. I love it because they're all like a little bit different, but they're big, they're athletic. There's some skill with Kai Jones. There's some athleticism with Greg Brown. You know, Jericho Sims is just a monster of a man and an athlete. So
he is the most powerfully athletic human being I think I've ever seen in my life. Like the way that he jumps, he is the definition of quick twitch. It's just like how do you get that far off of the ground? Like there's no way that you're human. I refuse to believe that you're human. He's got to be like 25% frog or something.
I love. I mean, that's, and I'm really happy for Shaka. I really am because of everything that. Again, listen, you know, you had expectations. You're hired at Texas. You finally, take the job from VCU. Everybody wanted you for years. You go to Texas and you underachieved. And you did. There's no other way to say it. You underachieved. And now finally it comes together with a veteran team that has gone through a lot in terms of adversity and a lot of losing.
Yeah, you mentioned that you think Andrew Jones is better than he was before. And I just wanted to touch on that real quick. I don't know that I would say that he's necessarily a better basketball player. Like I think Andrew Jones from 2017 would probably be Andrew Jones from 2021 playing one-on-one. But I think this version of Andrew Jones that has accepted who he is as a player, understands what his strength is, and is playing to that strength and just embracing the job that he has on this team, which is to be a floor spacer, to be kind of a secondary creator, and to just be that guy that forces teams to have to pay attention to him on the perimeter. And he's kind of embraced that.
Yeah.
And doing his job to the best of his ability has been something that has been really impressive. And I actually, I did just want to say one other thing because I thought it was really powerful. He had a quote. He said something in your interview where he said, he asked for his dad for advice, and his dad was like, don't, because for people that don't know, his father they were in a car accident when Andrew was 8, and his father was paralyzed in that accident. So he's been in a wheelchair for the last 15 years of his life, and basically for all of Andrew's developmental years. And you asked him, what has seeing your father go through that been like, and how has that helped you, and how has that taught you what you need to do to be able to deal with your own struggles? And I'm bringing up the quote right here. He said the advice he got from his dad was enjoy each day, take it as it is. Don't worry about the future or the past. Enjoy the moment, live in the moment. And, I really hope that he was able to enjoy and live in that moment that he had yesterday, because pretty good for him, man. It just brings a smile to your face.